Hi, welcome to Dobby's Repairs. I'm Dobby the Fixing Elf. In this video I'll be showing you how to replace the clutch on a 2007 Ford C-Max with a 1.6 petrol engine. It's definitely one of the more challenging DIY jobs, but if you've got some time, patience and the right tools, it's definitely something you can tackle yourself. I'll also show you a few tips and tricks along the way to help make the job go a bit more smoothly. As always, there's a full list of the tools I use down in the description. You don't have to be a fixing elf to do this, so grab your tools and let's get fixing. So the first step to this job is to open the bonnet. I've skipped that to save some time. This is quite a long job. So we're going to remove this Jubilee clip that connects the air intake to the airbox. I'm going to start by removing this airbox. There's a little rubber band just down here, which you just need to pop off. It can be a bit stiff. You can use a screwdriver on it if you need to. And now we're going to remove the airbox itself, starting by removing this pipe. It won't come quite loose because I've got to remove a few other bits first, like this intake pipe that comes from the cold air feed. You'll see me remove that just now. Just lift it up and pop it out of the way. You might as well pull it all the way out, because when you pull the airbox up, it's going to fall out anyway. So there you pop it up and then you take it out. That's your feed from the cold outside there. And I'll just lift the airbox out, and there's a little pipe underneath that we need to be careful of when we pull it up. Once you get it off the little rubber stoppers, it comes up fairly easily. So just be careful of the little pipe that's down the bottom. There, you can see it just come into view now. And this is quite a tricky little pipe to get off. You need to give it a little squeeze and a little twist and pull it at the same time, which is quite fun. But as I was saying, this is quite a long job we're going to get through, so I'm going to try and be as quick as possible with the segments, so I'm going to speed things up the best I can. But if you have any questions, just ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And the next stop, we're going to pop underneath the car after we've got it jacked up in the air and remove the reversing switch and pull off this little plastic cover that covers up the gear selector. It comes off fairly easy. Someone had been in it before and damaged this little plastic cover. Next up, we'll start by removing the little cable tie that someone's used. You shouldn't really need to use cable ties, you just hold themselves in fairly easily anyway. This one certainly has since I finished the repair, so that's always good. Once we get the cable tie out of the way, we use a 15mm spanner to help remove the gear linkage. Just get it behind there and give it a good pry. It pops off fairly easily. Once you get the angle right, there you go, so as you can see, it just pops off nice and simple. And now we're going to remove this other bit of gear linkage at the top, which comes off fairly simply as well. Just get the spanner behind there and give it a good pry. And this one goes all the way through, it's not like that one, so you just have to keep prying it until it pops off, like that. That's the two linkages disconnected from the gearbox mainly. Now we're going to give this little connector a pull, and it should pop out. They do get a bit stiff, you meant to twist them and pull them at the same time. I'll show you more of that when we reinstall it. Once that one's off, now we're going to start by removing these 8mm bolts. They hold on this little plastic cover around the gear linkage. I'm only removing this to stop any oil from spilling. I don't really need to do it on this one, but I highly recommend doing it. It makes the clean up so much easier. There's only a few extra bolts, 4 of them in total. As you can see, I've marked them all here. And yeah, you want to remove all these, and when you remove the drain plug later, it will just stop the oil spilling out. This one had got a massive crack where I'm ratcheting now, so someone's obviously been in there and broken it up before. That's where the gearbox oil normally falls out and covers everything. Luckily we could remove it, makes life a bit simpler. And I'm going to do the next one. And they come out fairly simply really. Bit of an extension for this one. There's one right at the top that you can't really see, but it comes out fairly simply as well, up near the top of the gearbox. And this is where I'm going to remove the gearbox linkage now, because I forgot to do it earlier. I should have done it earlier, would have made life a bit simpler. And yeah, we'll remove that, and then we'll remove this last 8mm bolt, and the cover will be off. And here's just a closer look at where all these bolts are located, just to make it easier for when you're putting it back on. There's the top one there, and there's that right on there. We'll put them somewhere safe. I highly recommend when you're doing a big job like this to have something to organise all the bolts with, so you know where they all are. So I'm going to use a little tray, and I'm going to pop them in individually. Now we're going to remove two 30mm nuts that hold on the bracket that holds the gear linkage. This just stops it getting snagged and stuff when you're removing it and makes your life a lot simpler. I highly recommend removing this too. So it's just two 30mm bolts. And you just quickly work them out with a spanner like I am here. So you can't see the top one, it is in a bit of an awkward angle. And I didn't quite have the car high enough. Another good tip is to get the car as high as you possibly can. Really does help. I was on a bit of a slope here, which I don't recommend working on normally, but needs must. Now we're going to break the drain plug loose, or the fill plug loose, should I say. Always break the fill plug loose before you break the drain plug loose to make sure you can actually get fluid back into the gearbox. Now we're going to break the 19mm drain plug loose. So here we come with the 90mm socket. I'm going to break it loose and then we'll run it out. Make sure you have something to catch all the oil when it comes out. You can replace the oil. I'm going to reuse it here. It's not as bad as it looks in the camera. It looks really dark, but it's actually in fairly good nick. But more on that later. And there it comes. We'll let this drain out to it runs to a trickle. We need to remove the oil so it doesn't pour out when we remove the drive shaft in a moment. So yeah, just let it run to a trickle like this and then put the drain plug back in. So there we go. It's getting nice and slow now. Once it gets to about this stage, it's time to put the drain plug back in. So you want to run it back in by hand, make sure it doesn't cross thread. And yeah, once you get it nice and tight down, just tuck it down with your ratchet. You don't want it leaking out when you're refilling it later on. There we go. I'm also going to pop the drain plug back in, which is an 8mm hex. So we'll pop that back in just so it doesn't get lost. Obviously when you put the drain plug back in, don't over tighten it, just run it in by hand. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky. As you can see here, I'm at a bit of a weird angle when I'm trying to get it in. But yeah, I'm just literally tightening it down with the socket in my hand, just enough so it doesn't fall out. And now we're going to start by removing the ball joint. Sorry about the lighting here, it is absolutely shocking, the sun was right in my face. But once you've given it a good scrub down with a wire brush and some penetrating fluid sprayed on it, it'll break loose fairly easy and it shouldn't catch as you thread it out. Threads can sometimes get dirty from rust and debris from the road, so giving them a good clean off always helps. And you're going to work this bolt out. There are other videos I do on removing ball joints, they're all fairly similar. So we just run it loose like this and get it fairly loose. And once you get it to the top, you want to stop and use your tool of choice to break it loose. You can see it won't be too long for this one. Once again, apologies about the lighting, it was hard to control unfortunately. These are in real world settings, so sometimes you have to take the rough with the smooth. So once we get this one loose, it seems to take forever. You'd probably be quicker with a ratchet and spanner, but I didn't think about using it at the time. And now I'm just about to have the nut loose, which is quite good. So there we go, nut's off. Now I'm going to put it back on. As you can see, it's off just there. We'll put it back on when we break it loose with our ball joint tool, which is a pretty handy little tool. I highly recommend getting one of these. You can also hit it with a hammer. I've never had much luck with that action, but this definitely works for me. And as you can see, it pops loose with a nice satisfying noise. And now it's nice and loose. You'll sometimes find that the ball joint spins, like this one does here. So I've just got a 6mm hex on a 1/4 inch spanner, just to hold it while I loosen the nut. Sometimes you also get a bit tighter when you tighten them down with a ball joint tool. So as we're working this loose, I'll just ask what your favourite way is to remove a ball joint. So now we have the nut spinning freely. We just need to pull down the lower control arm to release the pressure on the spanner that we use to hold it still. So I'm going to use this tool quickly. This is a lower control arm removal tool. It's fairly useful. I did a video on it, I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out. We're going to finish off removing the nut now. Now we get it off, give it a little tap to get the spanner finally free. Now we can completely remove the nut, and we're going to use the same tool to remove the lower control arm from the steering knuckle, which means we can now move on to the next step of removing this drive shaft. Now, I'm just going to be removing the drive shaft from the gearbox side. I'm tucking it out of the way, as you'll see here, so I get my little pry bar in here. We'll just pop it loose fairly simply to get it in, and it'll pop out fairly simple with a little wiggle. to get the angle right. There we are, and now it's loose and pulled out. So we can pull the drive shaft out the way. I'm just going to tuck it out the way with a bungee strap in a minute as you watch this video. Just pull it out and wiggle it past. You may need to pull the steering knuckle back a bit to give you a bit more clearance. But yeah, once you do this, it's fairly simple really. Once you get past this part of the gearbox. Bit of a wiggle. As you can see, it was about 1:15 when I started this. And yeah, once it's out, knock the camera over, that's a must. And yeah, we'll move it around. And we'll just move the arm out the way. So I'm going to tuck it round the other side of the lower control arm. Just fairly straightforward. Just give it a wiggle and move the arm a bit. As you can see, it slides past. And that goes there, and it's out of the way. You can't damage it with a gearbox or anything, which keeps it safe. I'm just using this bungee strap to hold it up. And I'll just keep it nicely out of the way and nice and safe, which is what we want. Just tied it up to the strap there, as you can see. There's my actual stand. Now you can stick a bit of blue towel in the gearbox mount, in the gearbox housing where the drive shaft goes, just to catch any leaking oil, because there'll still be a tiny bit left in it, and also to stop any dirt or debris going into the gearbox. Now on the driver's side, I've already taken the nut off to save a bit of time. I'm going to pop it down with this tool again. There we go. And we just pull it out of the way. There we go. Now I'm going to pop underneath the car in just a second. There we go. Now I'm underneath the car, and there's two 13mm nuts that hold on the bracket for the driver's side drive shaft. It's a slightly longer drive shaft than the passenger side one. So we're going to run these two 13mm out. There's one there, and there's one slightly higher up that you'll see in just a second. There it is. And just run it out with a ratchet. Incidentally, you can do all this with hand tools. I'm just using a selective ratchet to speed things up. But yeah, once you get that out, you'll be out of the way, and you just need to give it a gentle wiggle. And the idea of this is you wiggle it back, like so. It will help remove it. So grab it, give it a firm grip, and it will pop out fairly simply on the driver's side. Much easier than the passenger side. And we're going to wiggle this out of the way to get past the plastics and stuff. And we'll just pop it in a nice position. So just pull it round. Again, you may need to move the steering knuckle just a bit to give you about a bit extra clearance. So just put the camera on this side, and once you get past the lower control arm, it'll go down nicely and sit on the floor. So there we go. It should be coming down any moment now. There we go. And yeah, we just leave this like this for now. It's not going to do it any harm. But it's nice out of the way so it doesn't get in our way of what we're going to do next. It's always quite good. Now we're going to start by removing the 13mm and the 15mm lower gearbox mounts. So as you can see here, I'm going to start by loosening these ones off. Ideally you want to just loosen them off. I do completely remove some of these and I put them back in a bit. But yeah, just loosen them off really does help. Again, break it loose and drive it out. And the next one, as you can see, I also put a bit of blue towel in the gearbox hole on this side, with the drive shaft hole. And what I should have done is put the bolts back in like I am now. If I just left them in after I broke them loose, I could have broke all the bolts loose. And now we're going to need two 15mm. So there's the first one. And we'll run that out. And that's the gearbox mount mostly disconnected now. Just run all the screws out. And I didn't do it when I first started this first part of this job, but I should remove this other part of the gearbox mount. So that bit I'm wiggling now. I did think I had enough clearance, but I didn't, so later on in the job I had to remove it. So this is when I'm trying to put the gearbox back in, it kept snagging, so quickly remove it with a 15mm again. Not the camera as always, because that's good. And you can see I'm just using a hand ratchet here to do this. They can be fairly tight, these ones, so you may need to use some penetrating fluid. But yeah, once you get this one out and just remove the gearbox completely, it does make your life easier. Yeah, once we get that out of the way, we can move on to the next part. But before we do, a good tip is to put all your bolts back in the parts you're removing, if you can. To keep them safe and together, you know which order they go back in. Now we're going to remove the 13mm bolts that hold the bell housing onto the gearbox on the engine side. So there's 5 of them in total, and I've just quickly whipped them all off. One of them did break off, which is just here, which I'll remove in a moment. You'll see that in the video. Just a quick shortened down version of that. Now we're on the gearbox side, and we're going to remove the 30mm bolts on this side. All the gearbox bell housing bolts are 30mm, so it does make it fairly straightforward and simple. And there's one up here, you can't really see it just yet, but it has a little wire through it, which I'll show you in just a second. And yeah, just remove that 30mm bolt, and as you can see that's the one we just removed. Now we're going to start removing the starter motor bolts. There's a few of these, so I'll try my best to mark them. There was also another top bell housing bolt that was missing. I'll replace that in a bit. But yeah, so we're going to remove this one here. And there's that one coming out just now. It comes out fairly simply, really. There we go. It's quite a long one as well. And there's another slightly shorter one that we're going to remove now. Just get my ratchet in place. Once you get your ratchet on it. There we go. And we can buzz it out. Extensions are your friend in this job. So we'll quickly run this out. So now that's out, we'll move on to the next part. I dropped it on the floor, as you can see. So now we're going to move the hydraulic line to the slave cylinder. This is fairly straightforward. We need to pull this little metal clip out. Just grab hold of it and give it a good pull with a pair of pliers, or you can use a pick or a screwdriver. I like pliers so it can't fly off everywhere, in case I need to reuse it. Incidentally, you can also see the drain valve here, the bleeder valve, should I say, for the clutch. More on that later. So now I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to bung it up with a little rubber stopper to stop it leaking hydraulic fluid or brake fluid everywhere. So yeah, pop that in. Nice and secure, nice and tight so it don't leak everywhere. There's still a bit of a leakage, but it's coming from a slave cylinder, I believe. Give it all good clean. There we go. I'm going to cut this little cable tie. Obviously whoever was in here wasn't very careful and damaged a lot of stuff. So once I've got this cable tie cut loose and removed out of the way, this is just holding the battery terminals on. We can move on to the next part. There we go. There's also a little rubber hose that we need to remove that's connected to the top of the gearbox. So I'm just going to do that now with just give it a little gentle tug and pull it out of the way. There's the connector it was on. Now we're going to jack the engine up with a jack to support the weight when we remove the gearbox mount bolts. The upper gearbox mount bolts, should I say. So yeah, just you do a gentle jack and hold it nice and securely, like that. And lift it up fairly high so it makes it easy to remove the bolts, but not too high, so it comes off the jack stands. There we go. And now we're going to remove this 30mm nut first, that holds on a little earth cable. There we are. Just break it loose. Once we break it loose, we can just run it off by fingers because it's not very hard to remove. And now we have 3 15mm bolts holding the gearbox mount on, which I've already shown you in my little pop-up arrows. But yeah, so we're going to start by removing them. This one's easiest to do with a spanner. Ideally a shorter spanner, so it don't get snagged on stuff. So as you can see, I just swapped it over for a shorter spanner, just to finish removing it. And this is the second hardest of the 3 we need to remove, I found, just because of the cables being in the way. There we go, that one's removed. Now I'm going to remove the easiest one I found. Click a ratchet on it nice and simply. So yeah, we'll get this nice and run out, which is quite quick. I try to sped things up, just to make things a bit quicker for you. And yeah, once that's out, we'll just remove the last one, which is over the back here. You can see the ratchets on it. And yeah, we'll just break it loose and then we'll just run it out. Hopefully you're finding this video helpful so far. If you are, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more videos. Yeah, now we can quickly finish working this one out. I showed you the electric ratchet here, I probably could have got it in. I didn't think I had the clearance, but looking at this video back, I probably did. Yeah, once we get it out, the gearbox mount is now disconnected from the gearbox. There we are. Remember to keep all these safe. Now I'm going to drop the engine down, just so it gives us a bit more access to the last 2 upper bell housing bolts, I say. Yeah, so just drop it down. Just makes it a lot simpler and easier. There we go. That should be about the right height now. There we are. Nope, we're a bit lower. You probably don't need to go quite this low, but it definitely helps. Now we're going to remove the last of the 13mm bell housing bolts that are holding the gearbox on. This is the last bolt holding on. There should be another one on the other side that obviously was missing, which I replaced when I put it back together. But yeah, I just broke this one loose and I'll just run it out. You will see the gearbox start to move as you loosen this out. I would normally recommend removing this one before you remove the other one, but as it was in here, I do it this way. Make sure you've got something fairly soft in case the gearbox does fall underneath it to catch it and make it cushion the blow as much as possible. You don't want to damage your gearbox by cracking it when you drop it on the floor. There we go, run it out fairly simply. Again, it's done all done by hand here. This does go through a mount that holds the gear linkage, a little bracket, as you can see. Now it's moving because the bolt's completely out of the gearbox. So I'm just going to grab hold of it quickly. And then I'll just very carefully move underneath the car to help cushion and guide it down. So you can see, just give it a gentle wiggle. Obviously yours may fall off completely because you hopefully haven't got a broken bolt to remove. But yeah, there we go, and there's a little view of the broken bolt that we're going to remove in just a second. Yeah, that's the gearbox out now. As you can see, lots of clutch material inside it. But we'll deal with that in a moment. So now we're going to remove the old pressure plate and friction plate. So I'm using this pry bar as a wedge to stop the flywheel from turning. You can also get tools for this, but this is a quick way. I did have the tool to do it, so this will do. As you can see, it stops the flywheel from turning, so you can break loose the 10mm bolts. There are a few of them, and just run around the gearbox and remove them all. The flywheel, should I say, remove them all. And yeah, just run them out. There are 6 of these bolts in total to remove, so quickly whip them out. They're quicker than an electric ratchet, but if you've got a hand ratchet, just work them out. As you can see, the middle of the gearbox is full of friction material. In the middle of the pressure plate there, should I say. But yeah, we're going to keep removing it. So we're down to another one now. And they just found the outer perimeter. Like so. I'm just going to adjust the camera in a minute so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And you just find it, there we are, and break it loose. It can be a bit stubborn sometimes. Just run it out. There's one more left that I haven't seen. You just feel around and you find it. There we go. And they all pop out fairly simply. And here comes the pressure plate now. With a bit of a wiggle. There we are, it's been removed. And there's the flywheel. So there we go. Now we'll quickly remove this broken bolt. This is a sped up footage. There will be a full video on removing broken bolts on the channel very soon. I'm just working on some more footage. There you are, that came out fairly simply. And now I'm going to remove these 3 10mm bolts as well from the slave cylinder. Get it off the gearbox. This is the part that failed the most. That caused all the destruction and all these lovely friction material everywhere that you can see in the bottom there. So yeah, this will come out fairly simply really. These are 10mm. The new slave cylinder does come with its own bolts, so that's quite good. You just want to work them out nice and gently. There we go. And I'm going to pull it out and remove it. There should be some sealant on here. This one didn't have any on it. We'll put that on back in a minute. Now on to one of the most important steps in my opinion. Giving everything a really good clean down. As you can see, there's a lot of debris from the old clutch. And there's a lot of grease and grime. We need to clean all this out to make sure we have a nice clean clutch, so we don't have any issues with slipping caused by oil ingress or grease or whatever. Just want to make sure everything's nice and clean. And just quickly work around. And yeah, I might go a bit overboard with the brake clean here. But yeah, you just want to make sure everything's clean, there's no debris anywhere. Now we're also going to clean the flywheel. So give it a good spray down. Wipe it off with some blue towel. I'm also going to give it a quick sand over with some 120 grit sandpaper. Just to help clear out any ridges and just resurface it in case there's any like glazing. I don't think there is, but I'm going to give it a quick beat down with some 120 as I said. And then we'll spray it off again, just make sure it's all nice and clean. And taking the time to do these little extra steps really does help your clutch replacement go smoothly and give you the best results at the end. So yeah, we just need to keep buffing it off and just rubbing it down. We want to make sure it's nice and clean and nice and secure, as I've already said. Yeah, another good spray down. I only used about 4 cans of brake clean on this, so not too many at all really. I did go a bit overboard, I have to admit. Now we've got the new clutch, and it's a Borg and Beck clutch. And if you notice on there it says Gearbox side, so it's very important. I'm going to test fit it on the splines of the gearbox shaft. Make sure it actually fits before we put it all together. It could be a right nightmare if it doesn't. But yeah, now we're going to put the new slave cylinder in. Here's the new slave cylinder. And it is very confusing. Some people say you need sealant on here. Like Haynes would say you need sealant on here. But other people say you don't. I'm going to put on a bit of instant gasket on here. Just to make sure. Just to be on the safe side. Belts and braces and all that. So I'm going to run a small bead around the outside edge. And this will just really help out. Stop any oil leaking through from the gearbox. Yeah, just a nice little bleed around here like so. And now we're going to pop it in to the gearbox. So spin it around. And we're going to slide it in. Just wiggle it down until it seats nicely. Like so. Again, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to make sure everything's nice and clean. And there we go. That's all nicely centered and secure. We're going to run these new bolts in. These are 8mm. So we're going to run them down fairly simply and fairly easily. Obviously you don't want to over tighten them. So we'll run them all in first and then we'll tighten them down in a little sequence in just a moment. To make sure we don't warp anything or crack anything. So run these down and then we'll tighten them down. As you tighten them you will find some of them do get a bit looser, so you may want to make a second pass. Like I do here. Just want them secure but not over tight. Like that. I believe the torque spec is 10 Newton meters on these, so don't have to be very tight at all. There we go. And now we're going to clean the new pressure plate off. Give it a good old spray down. Also to give the friction plate a good old spray. Just to make sure there's no grease or packing anti rust inhibitors on it. Yeah, so once we do that, we'll grab the clutch alignment tool. This is the easiest way of doing it. Get yourself a clutch alignment tool. I've done a review on a different one. This is a new one I got. So I try it out on this job. It seems to work fairly well. There will be a video coming on this clutch alignment tool soon. It'll probably, hopefully, be the next video after this tool, after this repair. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, we can tighten it down and secure it all nicely. There we go. And once it's all secure, we can put it back on to the flywheel. There we go. We're going to be going right now. A pro tip is to make sure that the back of the spindle isn't popping out like that, so nice and flat. That's what we want. And now all we're going to do is pop it back on these little metal pegs and secure it down. It will take a bit of a stretch, so you may have to give it a gentle tap, as you'll see me doing in just a moment. Just line it up with the little metal pegs, like so. There we are. And just wiggle it back on. And just give it a little gentle tap with your hand. And just pop it back in, like that. So once it's on, just another little tap, just to make sure it's all nice and secure. And luckily, because it holds onto the metal tabs so well, metal pegs, you haven't got to hold onto it while you're putting in a few bolts. So I'm going to start them all by hand, as always. You should always start all your bolts by hand, so they don't cross-thread. And yeah, you can run them all in, and I'll work them down into a snug, and then we'll tighten them down, going around the outside edge. So there we are, that's another few in. Just get them all back in, all 6 of them. There we go. And I'm going to start tightening them down. Again, it's just one of those matters of taking your time, just going around the edge, and securing them all down. Again, these don't have to be overly tight, they just have to be tightened securely. There we go. Keep working them down. And as with the slave cylinder, as you go round, the other ones will start to get looser. You have to do a couple of trips round just to make sure everything's tight. But yeah, just work them all in like this. There we go. So I recommend about 3 passes once you get them to this point where they're nice and snug. Just to make sure they're all seated properly and can't come loose. The last thing you want to do is these come loose and your pressure plate to disengage from your friction plate and just cause like be a grenade really in your gearbox, I believe. So I wouldn't want that to happen. So yeah, we keep working around and tighten them all down. As you can see, it's starting to move, so that's probably just about tight enough. There we go. And I'm happy with that. We'll remove the tool now. Make sure you remove this, otherwise you won't get your gearbox back on. There we go, that's out now. Make sure you don't leave any of the little bits behind as well. Very good little tip. And that's all nice and ready for the gearbox to go back in it. And the last step before we install the gearbox back into the car is to grease the spindles. So again, this is grease that comes with this clutch kit. If you haven't got these, just use some nice high temperature grease. Yeah, just rub it on like that. And there we go. Now, I'm using an engine hoist to reinstall this because I hurt my shoulder during this job. So I've got my other half working the engine hoist while we try and line it up. And it's fairly easy with an engine hoist. Makes it nice and quite simple. I did a video on building the engine hoist that I picked up cheap from OnBuy. There'll be a link in the description for that as well. It does make it a lot easier than trying to struggle and get it up yourself. Yeah, the whole idea is just get it lined up and get your splines through your pressure plate and friction plate. You're basically in luck and it goes together. It's quite a difficult process to explain. It's more of a feel one, as you can see here. And what I like to do is make sure I've got a bolt on hand, and as soon as I get it into place, let's take a bit of wiggling and a bit of persistence. There we go. You go in, and as you can see, once the bottom bit lines up there, and we can quickly run one of the gearbox mount bolts back in. Not gearbox mounts, bell housing bolts back in. And yeah, we'll get it in there. There we go. And that'll stop it from falling back off, which makes life so much simpler. Again, we're not going to overly tighten this to get it threaded in by hand. I'll just take the pressure. Obviously we've still got the engine hoist on it as well. If you're doing this without an engine hoist, I suggest getting a coupling on the bottom here. Now we'll go back at the top and put the other bell housing bolt back in. So we'll put in the one that was missing in first. We just need to give the gearbox a slight tug up to get it into the right place. As you can see, I also use a bungee strap to hold all the cables together. Make sure we're going to get trapped in the gearbox, between the gearbox and the engine as we're putting it back together. That's another good tip. And before you tighten everything down completely, you want to make sure that you have nothing trapped between it. And so I'm just going to get this one in by hand and once I give it a gentle tug like that. I'm just pulling up on the chain there, and that should help get it into position. And now we're going to tighten it down quickly with the ratchet. And yeah, that's the first one back in. Once you get this one in, you can tighten this one all the way down. I highly recommend doing it. There we are, that's one nice and securely back in. Now we're going to do the one that had the gear linkage on it. So we could take the old gear linkage mount bit off because it makes it easier than fighting the gear linkage because it's in quite a tight and confined spot. There's a little hole we need. And we just move these out the way for a second, and we're going to get it into place. So there we go. Just put my hand in there. You can't really see anything, I'm sorry about this, but when you do the job you'll see where it is. And yeah, it's just sort of like 30 centimeters across from the other one we put in just a moment ago. And we'll start it by hand, and then we'll run it down with a ratchet. I'm reaching through from the footwell here, the wheel well should I say. And yeah, we're going to work it in and get it nice and tight. And once these two are in, the worst part's over, I think. You definitely know the gearbox won't be coming back out now, which is always good. Well, if you need to remove it, obviously, but fingers crossed you won't. And now we're going to get the gearbox mounts back in. So I'm going to start by popping them in place, and then we're going to jack the engine up. As you can see me here, jacking the engine up, and it will lift the gearbox back up into the right place. There we go. And then we can start these by hand. Just run it in. Once you get it in, started, it's pretty good. Remember, you want to over tighten these down to get all three in place, because you can misalign it and it will make it very difficult to get them aligned. So now we're going to put this one back in. As you can see, my gloves ripped. Yeah, just quickly run it in. And then we'll get we just have to line it up with the hole. That's why you don't tighten them all down straight away. And we're going to do the back one here. You can't really see what I'm doing, but yeah, we're just doing the back one. Unfortunately, while I was doing this, my memory card filled up, so you could actually see the footage of me completely reinstalling these gearbox mount bolts, but I also removed the jack, and it's just been held up by the gearbox mount now. I also installed the little black pipe back onto the breather there. So now we can move on to the next step, which is just reinstalling the gear linkage. So just push it back into that metal clip we removed it from, like so. Keeps it nice and secure. Now we're back into the car. I'm going to put the lower gearbox mount back in. So we'll start with the part that connects to the subframe, should I say. So you just run it in. Again, we're just going to put them all in, and then we'll tighten them all down after we get them all lined up, so they can't misalign. And it's a fairly straightforward process, really. There we go. And again, the ones that go onto the gearbox and onto the engine are 13mm, and the other two are 15mm. So there we go. Just tighten them down. Get them nice and secure, nice and tight. And there we are, we're nearly done. There we are. Just finish tightening these all down now. Get them nice and snug. There we are. And now we're going to quickly reinstall all of the 13mm bell housing bolts on the engine side. So as you can see, I've got a couple in. That's the one I started with earlier. And just simply work them in by hand first. You don't want to cross thread them. There is a slightly longer one of them, and that goes at the top here. Just here where I'm putting it in now. And there we are. Just run it down with the ratchet, and once they get tight, just tighten them down. Again, you want to go back after you put them all in and just double check everything, make sure nothing comes loose. There we go. That's just slightly longer one I just tightened down there. And yeah, just quickly double check and muck around with this one. There we are, that's nice and tight. Or will be any moment now. We'll run it down the ratchet and tighten it down. Again, just want to make sure once you've tightened them all down, you go back and double check. Obviously the camera's copying it again. It's quite a difficult job to film this. There we go. Especially at this angle, like I want to try and give you the best possible view of all the bolts and stuff. Hopefully you're finding it helpful. If you did, please drop a like. Yeah, we're going to keep working our way through these now. Just double checking everything. Now we're going to do these other two. Just run them by hand and then tighten them down with the ratchet. Knock the camera over again. There we go. Just tighten it down. Right up there, nice and secure. And there we are, rest them all in place, and I'll double check to make sure they're all tight. I'm going to remove that piece of blue paper now. And now we're on the other side, on the gearbox side, and we're going to start putting our bolts back in. So this is the one with the little metal bracket on. No, it isn't. This is the lower one, sorry. By camera. Low camera. So yeah, it was really bad for not going with the camera in this video, I apologise. But this is the next one up. This is the one with the little earth point. So we need to put that one in. Again, just line it up. It's a fairly long bolt. And there we go. Get it through, tighten it by hand. Or start it by hand, shall I say. And then just run it in with the ratchet. There we go. Nice and secure and tighten down. There we are. So now we can move slightly higher up and finish putting in the starter motor bolts. With this job you don't have to actually remove the starter motor, you just need to loosen it. So there's another earth cable here that we need to put in, but we're going to put the shorter one of the two that we took up from the top here. So again, these are all 13 mils. Once we get it in place, we'll buzz it down with the ratchet. Again, it is easier with an electric ratchet, but you can do it with hand tools. You can do it with spanners if you're really desperate. And yeah, we'll get this earth cable in, shall I say, and back into this gearbox mount bolt. There we go. Gearbox mount bolt, bell housing bolt. And then we're going to run this down now. There we are. And then we'll get it a bit tighter and make sure it's all nice and secure and flat. And that's all the bell housing bolts back in now. So we're going to quickly remove the little plug out of the new slave cylinder. As you can see, I'm leaking a bit of fluid from the hydraulic line that feeds it. So yeah, we're going to get it in place. Just push it in. We haven't got to remove the metal clip on this one. Make sure you give this all a good clean up straight away. Once you've done this, a bit of brake clean helps. I like to do this step now so the hydraulic fluid has a chance to fill up the slave cylinder before we start bleeding it. Now I'm going to start putting this drive shaft back in, so we're going to start with the driver's side. And it just needs to be twisted and lined up. As you can see, it's a bit of a struggle. Be careful of the drive shaft seals here when you're doing this. You don't want to damage them with the drive shaft. So just be careful as you do it. You'll see it roughly seats in once you can get it in the right position. It's just a bit fiddly. That's starting to go in now. There we are, almost in. And an easy trick for this job is if you look at the bearing support in just a moment, here it is. And if you want to get that lined up in the middle there, and once it's lined up roughly there, when you look back at the other end that goes into the gearbox, you'll see it's nice and seated. So now we're going to use the two 30mm nuts that we removed earlier to secure this little bracket back in place. I believe it's called a bearing support bracket, which is a bit of a weird name if you ask me. At least one of what I've really struggled to say just then. And yeah, we're going to put these two 30mm on. So we just need to work it into the right place. Once you get them started, again, always start your nuts and bolts by hand. It will save you a lot of hassle in the long run. No one likes to cross a bolt, especially on something like this. So yeah, just quickly run it in. Put it down and just snug them down nice and tight. That's now secured, and the drive shaft basically back in place. We've got to put the ball joint back in. So I've already popped it back in the hole, and we're just going to tighten it down. You may find it spins here. You can use a jack when you're putting it back together. Makes it quite simple. I'll show you more in just a second. Sorry about the lighting again. There we are. So we'll just tighten this down nice and tight. So all I did was align the ball joint with the steering knuckle. And here's my ratcheting spanner, which makes this job so much easier. And there we go. Just tighten it down. And there's a jack that I used to hold it to stop it from spinning. Now on the passenger side, I'm going to put the drive shaft back in on that side. And this one's a bit different to the other side. You really got to give it a bit of welly and it'll slam into place like that. With a nice noise again. But yeah, now we're going to quickly remove the nut. Line up the steering knuckle with the lower ball joint, or the ball joint and the lower control arm. And yeah, once you get it in like this, and this is the trick I did on the other side. I took my jack, I moved stuff out of the way, and we jacked it up, like so. and got it nice and tight so it doesn't want to spin because they're on a taper. And then you just run the nut down. So we'll do that now. And it takes a few moments to do this. So I'll just sped things up for you so you have to sit through the whole thing. And yeah, just make sure it's nice and tight when you're finished. And there we are. And with that done, the drive shaft is now nice and secure. We're going to move on to refilling the gearbox. So we're going to break open the fill plug. Again, it's an 8mm. And we'll run it out. Luckily when we put it back in earlier, we did over tighten it. And then I'm going to use a syringe to refill the gearbox oil that we removed, which is roughly around 2.3 litres. If you're replacing it, it says 2.3 litres according to comma. So yeah, I'm going to pump it back in, which is fairly straightforward. You can see here, I've had one in. Here comes some more oil. Just squeeze it back in, and just to give you a better idea of what I'm actually doing, I'll show you in just a second. So it is the drain pan, and I'm literally just sucking it out with this syringe and then firing it back into the gearbox. As it does look quite black here, but it's not actually that bad in person, if you know what I mean. And then we're going to put the gear or the filler plug back in. I'm going to tighten it down by hand first. Then we'll grab a ratchet and put the final tightness on it. I give everything a good tighten down. There we go. It's a good idea to give everything a good clean too now. Now we're going to put a gear linkage support bracket back on. So again, we've got two 30mm nuts to go on. As you can see here, just blowing the bracket up. It can only go on the one way, so you can't really get it wrong. It's sort of tapered and shaped. There we go. And I'm going to change the angle for you so you have a slightly better look. There we are. I need to run these two 30mm in, so starting by hand as always. There we are. Just get them nice in position and started. And then just work them down by hand. There we go. Get it nice and secure, nice and tight. Grab the electric ratchet to speed this one up. Just because my hands are getting tired now. We're about quite a few hours into this job now. Once we get it nice and secure, we can put the plastic back on. Again, I'm going to speed this process up because I showed you where the bolt holes go earlier. Just quickly work your way around and re-secure this little piece of plastic. There we are, so they're all back in now. All nice and secure. You can't see the one at the top because it's too dark. But then we're going to plug in our reversing switch while we're down here. Get it nice and secure. And now we're going to reinstall our gear linkage. So as you can see, they twist and they're spring loaded. As you twist them, you hold the thing, make sure you keep hold of it, and when you let go of it, it will spring back and lock itself into place. So there we are, that one's in place. There we are, nice and secure, as you can see, it's not going to go anywhere. And then we're going to do the other one, which is slightly out of view, so you can't see that, but it's the same process. You give it a good old twist. I do tend to free up quite easily once you remove them and give them a gentle knock about while you're doing this job. And then we're going to put the linkage back together, just pops on nice and simply. There we go, I'm going to pop the other one back on, if you can see just out of camera there, but there we go. Again, they just push on nice and simply really. You never fully seated when they're pushed all the way in and the little metal pin comes all the way through. Just going to adjust it, so there we go. And that's both bits of linkage reconnected. You can see there's a better look at the other one. Back in the right place. I'm not going to put a cable tie on it, I don't think it needs it. I'm not quite sure the other person who did this job before did. But yeah, nice and secure. That's what we want. Now we're going to quickly pop the plastic cover back over this. We're done with this part now. There we are. Oh, we're going to give it a quick test actually first before I put the plastic cover back on. Just to make sure it selects all the gears and everything properly. Just running it through and just giving it a good test. Make sure the gear linkage is working as it should. It all seems to be working fine as far as I can tell. Now we're going to pop the plastic cover back on. There we go. Just getting nice and secure. I appreciate everyone who's watched it so this far. I've also re-secured the little clip there. So I've got a new one. And now we're going to open up the bleeder valve. There's a little rubber cap on the end of it. And we're going to pull it off. There we are. And now we're going to open the brake fluid reservoir. And we're going to top it off with some brake fluid. So there we are, just using the syringe again. I did clean it out between the gearbox oil. So I'm overfilling it, but once you bleed it through, it will go back to the normal level. Just make sure it's all nice and topped off. And now we can move on to bleeding the clutch. Now as for bleeding the clutch, you take nice slow steady strokes to the pedal. You don't want to rapidly pump it, you just want to pump it nice and slow and steady. And then once it gets hard, crack the bleeder valve open like I'm doing in this little clip. And repeat that 3 or 4 times until the air stops coming out with the fluid. And then close it down and put your little cap back on. It's one of those things that you notice once the air stops coming out, it'll be fine and you'll get a feel for the clutch pedal. Now we can quickly put this air cable back on that we didn't put back on earlier. And now we're going to reinstall the airbox. So there we are. Just get it all back in line. So put the little rubber band back on. And then, sorry, the camera angle a bit rubbish here. But yeah, I'm going to put this intake pipe back in. So you get it the right way around and lined up. And pop it all back in nice and easily, like so. And that goes on there. And then we just want to make sure this Jubilee clip's tightened down. And there we are. And that's how you replace the clutch on a 1.6 Petrol Ford C-Max. If you found this video helpful, drop a like, subscribe. Any questions, drop me a comment, I'll do my best to answer it. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps both the channel and me out. If you're new here, consider subscribing. I post 2 videos a week, so by subscribing, you'll never miss a thing. Got any questions or suggestions? Drop a comment down below, and I'll do my best to reply to everyone. Here at Dobby Repairs, we're all about helping you learn how to work on your vehicle safely and showing you don't need to spend a fortune on tools to get the job done. Want to support the channel further? Become a member, starting at just 99p. Members get perks like early access to videos and more exclusive content. Keep fixing, and I'll see you in the next one.